Welcome to the Think Fit, Be Fit podcast, part of the Think Fit, Be Fit podcast network, where we put the power of dynamic fitness back in your hands one mental rep at a time. Effective thinking for potent fitness. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Think Fit, Be Fit. Welcome and Happy New Year again. We are ending our series on the fresh fitness perspective today. And I have an in-person guest, which is so exciting because this doesn't happen very often. And we just got done talking about so many wonderful things, so we're nice and juiced up for you. So welcome. Please introduce yourself and where we can find you on the internet.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Chris Rodousakis. I'm an exercise physiologist from Washington, D.C., just down the street. You can find me at aligningfascia.com. I'm like totally removed from those aspects of the business, but also on Instagram at aligningfascia, and mine is at C. Rodousakis.
Yes, Rodousakis. Is that Greek?
Yeah, it's very Greek.
Very cool. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Maryland, basically on the border from D.C. and Virginia.
Okay.
D.C. and Maryland. And Freudian slip when I said Virginia. But yeah, so I moved to D.C. when I was 21, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm from the other part of Maryland, very northern Maryland, Harford County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I mean,
Okay.
those farmlands, are pretty amazing.
Oh my God.
Not that you're in farmland.
Oh, I was. And honestly, it created, it's such a big part of my story, to be honest with you. Yeah, because I grew up next to a operational corn farm and was exposed to a lot of,
Forever
chemicals
Yeah.
and Aberdeen Proving Ground, which is also exposure to a lot of chemicals. And my mother died of a neurological condition. So it's a big part of my story growing up next to all those corn stalks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the house that we lived in, we lived on a corn plantation, and we lived in the carriage house and used a brick oven.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
So that's how I grew up, kind of barefoot in the country.
Was this in the 1800s?
Yeah, well, plus pesticides.
Exactly. They didn't have those back then.
Okay, not that funny. Yeah, that's my Maryland story, and I'm still an Orioles fan. How about that?
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
That's a big part of my Maryland story. But anyways, we're here to talk about the kind of a big perspective in exercise culture. And, it can take us forward, it can take us backwards. It's because professionals like us, we've been in the field for quite a while. Culturally, we're looking at, things that influence us and how we make decisions and how we invest our time, our money in exercise and what it does to us. So I'm inviting the audience really to open up their minds so that we can kind of declutter all the messaging from maybe 2022 and before. And especially before, because so many of those stories about how we used to be fit and how the magazines looked when we were kids, stick with us, and we just keep repeating it. So fresh fitness perspective is also for that, to wipe it clean so you can get a more sustainable, thoughtful process going in general. So if your client needed that, how would you guide them in that kind of thought process?
We are we thankfully are in a position where we have no advertising, we have no signage on our door. And so we get sent a lot of referrals, and a lot of times we'll get people who come through the door who look literally like they're magazine covers themselves. And the problem is they're in such severe pain. Mm-hmm. They've achieved this sort of Instagram body that they thought would bring them happiness and pain-free living, but they ended up being in more pain than ever. And it's just, we have to kind of teach that, I think, first, the foundation I think has to be laid, but then obviously coming back to it, even when you've achieved that sort of quote unquote perfect body, like, does it move well? Does it have the capacity for, force, transmission, force dispersion, all these things that we have to like really restore and continue to kind of keep up. I think that's kind of a dialogue, it sounds nerdy, but it's something that we have to kind of keep up with. And, soft tissue as a sort of means of connecting with your body, becoming not just aware of it, but, embodying your body, I think is something what we are obsessed with teaching people. We don't want them to just come to us when they're broken. We want them to kind of maintain and sort of support a healthy, holistic, well-functioning and well-regulating body.
I think that'll be one of the quotes I pull from the episode, embodying the body. Yeah. I do also see many clients that, need that. It's like that's a big message to receive, and it takes a lot of courage to step through and say, man, I was maybe doing something wrong, or I had just thank God for all those things that got me here, and it takes a lot of courage to work through that and get there. So so glad to have you as a neighbor for that. Okay, so we're bringing up a hot topic in fitness marketing culture and companies trying to sell more stuff, which is body positivity. It came in pretty strong for me when Gregory and I, my co-producer, and I just we're seeing different body types in the windows of stores. And he's in the middle of Manhattan in the Flatiron on 20th Street. So he's really in the middle of it. And he's like, these bigger models, mannequins in the windows are everywhere. And okay, is this helpful? Is it not? So what's your take?
I mean, I think it can be. Like, we study, adipose tissue and its supportive qualities, and it can be healthy, or it could be your best friend, or it could be your worst enemy, and it can come in different sizes. It can ebb and flow, and I think it really just depends. And I think, we have to kind of look at so many other factors. It's hard to say, and I never like to tell somebody when they come in they look heavier than the normal, like this is a bad thing, because sometimes they move beautifully and they're pain-free, and why would I intervene with that? That's their body's happy set point, especially for that period in their life, because then I get some emaciated person who would be like Kate Moss's doppelganger from like the 90s, and they're like in the worst pain. So it's not that one person needs to eat more, the other person needs to eat less. It's just, it's hard to say it. It's not an answer, but it's, I don't really, I'm more fascinated by it. But I don't judge it. And it's something that, after 25 years in the business, I think it's kind of cool. But if somebody moves well, I'm happy.
Nice. Okay. That is a really good way to say it. And I will stick up for Kate Moss and say I think it's very difficult to lay around smoking cigarettes and good fitting jeans. And also, her daughter, Lila Moss, is her doppelganger. And she is a supermodel, and I'm into it. I have to say this often. I like following celebrity kids.
It is fascinating. Well, how do they turn out?
I want to know. You got all the resources. How'd it go with that?
Truly.
Yeah.
It could be amazing. Yeah. Or it could be the worst thing ever. You could crash and burn.
So, anyways, it's interesting to think that I think what I'm hearing from you is you are fascinated by adaptation and how the body can adapt. And so you and I have a unique experience with working with cadavers. You have more experience than I do, but I would say if you get into a lab, if one gets into a lab and they see the organs and there's like adipose tissue, fat tissue, and you see it on there, especially like a liver or something like that, and you're like, how was this person walking around? And then you go down this rabbit hole. That's hard. But then you're like, wow, that's a miracle. Yeah. And sometimes I see that with my clients. I had one client in particular. He had a double knee replacement. He was in the firefighting education business, and he ran the program here at DCA for the, I guess the Port Authority is what it's called. I don't know. And he had lost all this weight, and he was like, I just need help with this tight adductor. And I'm like, that's it?
Yeah.
and you know what? He was thriving.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is amazing, and I'm just going to help him with his adductor. And we spent probably about 2 months together, and I think I remember helping him, and it was just a really good experience for me, you know, and just stepping back and saying, you know, his body is really good at what he's doing.
Yeah.
Even though he still had to get 2 knee replacements, probably from crawling around all those years.
Exactly. It's hard to know.
It's hard to know. But the way that he was operating currently, and he was active and happy and proud of himself and confident, a man over 60 in that position is amazing.
Yeah, what more could you ask for?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So, yeah, if you're out there, get in touch. Let me know how you're doing. And his name is totally blanking. Oh, anyways. So, body positivity. We've had, I just think it's, because on one side of the internet, you're going to see a version of it where we are just encouraged to be accepting of all waistlines, and that any body moving is a good body, is a good movement.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, that's like, maybe that's the just do it end, you know, just, okay, let's like not judge and get it and get moving. And then on the other end of the internet, you have behavior that is, you know, could be considered, I don't know, like incel, like toxic, but also very logical in some ways, and saying there's no way that's healthy. Like, why would we promote that? Yeah. And so I don't know where on the line spectrum do you think?
I do find it fascinating, like you know, FRC culture, where they're like functional range conditioning.
Okay, FRC. Yeah,
they're like obsessed with being able. Well, they think everything begins in the joint, and I have problems with that concept.
End range.
Yeah, it's like, okay, let's not get too crazy. But I do like
really
the idea.
Interesting Instagrams.
Yeah, totally. And there are hypnotic movement patterns.
Yes.
But being able to control, and I kind of go back, it goes back to like sort of embodying your body, but being able to kind of own your body. You're not like leasing this thing, you are owning it. It's your vehicle for interaction in the world. And being able to kind of like control its movement, I just find that to be like the epitome of sort of self-actualized movement, to be able to like own movement, and not just be a sort of victim of its, you know, incapacity. And I think, you know, I don't know, I'm a kind of, we were talking about this before, but I have so many things swirling in my brain, because going into this, I'm like, what is body positivity? And I want to talk about like the nerdy sort of characteristics of adipose tissue, how it stores forever chemicals and all that stuff. But that, you know, it goes back to like, how much should we encourage people to be happy where they are, and how much should we encourage people to sort of maybe, just maybe, try to improve where they are. Doesn't mean you have to kind of go down to a size 0, but do try and kind of gain a little bit greater capacity, especially just from a movement standpoint, so tissue quality standpoint, so that you're not in pain. You can do what you want to do.
Tissue quality. I kind of want to dig into that a little bit.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a good door to open. Okay, producer, cue the door opening sound.
Is it a creaky door?
I think it's more like the, it could be also like the gladiator entrance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, anyways, so tissue quality. So, you know, I think that would make some of my clients roll their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until you show them, skin is a diagnostic tool in some ways.
Oh, interesting.
So we use like a little bit of the structural integration approach of body reading, and it's almost an osteopathic lens if you go back even farther. But like skin can sometimes be an indicator of deeper dysfunction or good function. So sometimes when we see people, well, oftentimes we want them to strip down, not completely naked, but enough so we can see their movement without sort of any barrier, because I'm going to see, does that skin work with the adipose tissue, with the muscle, and the periosteum of the bone in some cases. Is there a congruent contraction throughout those layers? Are they agreeing? Are they disagreeing? Is sometimes the skin or a scar providing restriction? And if you're wearing so many layers of clothes, I can't see that. And oftentimes when we try and get an intake form, it's hard to remember that you fell off a swing when you were 12 and had to get 7 stitches, So we can then kind of scan the body for what we call tissue quality, in addition to movement analysis, and kind of paint a more complete picture. But yeah, I think the cool thing about it is that can change, and that's our conduit for change. We work on skin and adipose tissue, superficial fascia, in order to change the deeper layers when we do manual therapy. So I just can go down that rabbit hole forever.
Okay, so what is superficial fascia and adipose tissue? Like, are they hanging out together?
Yeah, so superficial fascia will house adipose tissue. So
Okay.
below the skin, you'll have superficial adipose tissue, superficial fascial membrane, then deep adipose tissue. And if those live in harmony, like you can kind of tell what layer you're in by the sort of orientation of the fat cells. Like the adipocytes will be kind of like oriented more vertically or diagonally, and they'll afford more glide and slide depending on where you are in the body. And so we kind of are obsessed with that because we want to see, obviously we can only see so much without, peering into the body with ultrasound or other sort of imaging, but we can usually tell by palpation and by movement if those layers are working well. And it's really cool. It's like phenomenal.
Yeah. So being able to assess that, especially around the scar, could really give people some insight into, movement blockages or why they might not even have sensations. Yeah. So, whatever. Appropriate sensations. I don't know. Take that word out.
A scar, a scar in your hip could have a cascade effect into the rib cage. It could create a breathing pattern disorder.
Yes.
It could create a knee pain. It could create so many things. And so we had somebody recently who had, a bar implanted in his rib cage to correct the pectoralis excavatum. I can't remember the exact term, but that sort of concavity of the chest. And that
was it aesthetic?
That's the thing.
You couldn't. Yeah.
They said that it was going to create impacts on his organ function if he didn't correct it, but
I mean, how do you say no to that?
Exactly, right?
Let me look into that.
And also, I've had a few scoliosis patients. We actually do work with a lot of them who get told the same thing, like, this could kill you. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
When was the last time in severe cases, yes, it's possible. But if you're trying to obfuscate and scare somebody into a surgery, then you're like really a dick. Sorry if you say. But
dick.
Yeah. But it's interesting because the cascade effects of his scars, like he was having all these neck pains.
Yeah.
And until we started working on those scars and tried to free up some of that fascial restriction, we couldn't even touch his neck because it was just, a fruitless cause.
Yeah, that's interesting. We get a lot of people with neck pain, and sometimes it's a hard sell to be like, I can't touch your neck until we work through the abdominal contractions.
And they're like, I didn't come here for that.
Yeah, and you're like, well, when you get personal referrals, it's it can be tough sometimes because they have an expectation. Anyways, that's
the good thing is they usually know that we're weirdos and that we'll find it. It'll be a circuitous route, perhaps, but and everybody's a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
There's no manual. And that's the thing that's like really like a big deal. People need to realize that we're still guessing. I've seen thousands of, tens of thousands of people at this point in my career, but I still don't know definitively that this is going to work until I try a few things. And I think it's disingenuous for us to kind of come at it with so much sincerity, or like so much, oh, I know this is your problem. This is the solution.
Yeah, you squatted like that, and that's definitely a problem.
Yeah, like really? Are you sure? Yeah. There's so many factors.
It was one squat.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so I think how to tie this back to body positivity, or how I would like to, or how it's happening in my head, is you and I have been working in this field combined 35 years, let's put it that, maybe more. And we're constantly assessing and reassessing and trying to remove judgment as much as possible. So it would seem ridiculous to people like you and I that people walk in the door with hard judgments on their body and not accepting it for where it is in this day and time.
Yeah.
Because it can change fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not, obviously, we know externally things might not look the same, but when things, like you can only change on a micro level, so you got to do it a little bit at a time and a little bit every day, and be mindful of that it is micro and you can't force it. So I think it's, that's where I would bring it back to body positivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, congrats to us.
We now consider fascia an emotional fabric, so how you're feeling that day internally is going to manifest externally. So if you're going for a photo shoot and you feel like shit, if you're like dealing with depression, whatever, anxiety.
You might have shit and sitting there.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
But it will convey. It will convey in the skin.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like when you radiate, there's so many reasons for it. Like, it's a thing. It's like getting into like vibrations. Like we can go down this as a separate podcast, but it's like we need to respect the biopsychosocial factors that have an impact on how we look and feel. Because if we discount those, it's not just mechanical. Like we test people inside the studio, but we're also looking to see how they're feeling that day. Because if they're if their cat just died, they're not going to do so well. Or if they didn't get a good night's sleep for any reason, we have to take that into account. That's not going to be a good day to do, PR. Or maybe it is, depending on that person. Maybe that's going to be the fuel they need to kind of like rage through. But we just have to take into account all those factors. And there's so many, since it's so multifactorial, it's kind of hard, but it's also exciting. It just makes us as practitioners have to pay attention.
Yeah, yes. Well, yeah, a lot of details. So, okay. Yes, you're right. There is another podcast coming. And two, this isn't, well, I think it is a body positivity topic. How does the consortia of fascia people know that there's an emotional fabric to it?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Actually, what's cool, at the Fascial Research Congress in Montreal this past September, there was a lot of cool studies on this. Dr. Schleip, Dr. Robert Schleip, for the audience, had this really fantastic study on depression and its impacts on fascia. And there was another one, forgive me, whoever that was. There's enough out there that points in this direction, and obviously we have to do more research on it, but there's anecdotal evidence of it. When you're depressed, you're going to be kind of slumped over. When you're happy, you're generally going to be a little bit more upright.
Yeah.
But there is now scientific evidence to back it, and because I didn't review the research.
Sure, yeah, I just yeah.
But look it up.
Pull it out of your pocket.
Exactly. It's cool because it's now not just, conjecture. We're not just pulling it out of our ass. There's legitimate evidence to point to, one's state of mind and the impacts on the soft tissue that then governs the muscle tissue. In our view, and I hate to say this, but muscles are fascia's bitch. And
interesting, yeah.
If it operates well, things are harmonious. If it doesn't, you're gonna, be in trouble.
Yeah. And so that would be the interesting conversation to have, because I feel the opposite, where
exactly. Isn't it funny?
Yeah, and that's really cool. And but so I want to know from the researcher point of view, how did you get to the point to be I need to look at emotions and fascia and skin? What's an underlying rationale?
Well, because we see so many of that. Like what I was saying before, if somebody comes in and they're really down and out, there's impacts on performance. And so a lot of this is funded by, decent money, but we need to know, it's not just, we can't just say, oh, well, this person has great muscle tissue, or the neuromuscular capacity or neuromuscular efficiency, but that could be on Wednesday. By Friday, they could be a complete mess. And it's the same person. And nothing changed except they got 2 bad nights sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're depressed about, something. And so that's what was the sort of impetus for the study. And I'm glad they did it, because we need to do more. Because we need to, as practitioners, be able to spot that. And there's some things that, honestly, we don't have to necessarily even get into with our clients and patients.
Yeah, because I run away from that.
Yeah. But we can kind of file that in the back of our brains, be like, you know what? Today isn't the best day to push that person.
Yeah. That's when I roll my clients know, like, I'm sensing their doom gloom when I roll the red light over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just gonna sit here for a second? And they're like, okay. I'm like, yeah, and then they start taking off their shirt, and it's great.
Yeah.
To get more red light.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a cool nonverbal cue. When you see them like slumped over, you don't even need to really ask much.
Yeah.
You could probe if you have that relationship with them, but if they're new, maybe not.
Yeah. No, sometimes we do little surveys, like, on a 1 to 10, where you at on your motivation? And we just ask it simple because I think it's really great when people step up and they give us that info.
Yeah.
And if you give them the opportunity, be like, can you tell me?
Totally.
Or, they'll just shut down. They'll say, I don't know. What do you mean? And, maybe the opportunity passed for that day. But if they take that opportunity to open up, we want to honor that. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's so much fun stuff to dig into here. But I've got we're going in a different direction. Okay, so
is this a U-turn or
left? it's a big it's a helicopter ride up.
Shit.
Just like what I wanted to talk about some wellness trends that I picked up from the internet.
Oh yeah.
So MindBody did a survey to their customers, which you and I kind of understand that's probably a big pool of people. But also, it's also MindBody's people that are using MindBody are probably more affluent than not.
Good point.
So we want to keep that in mind. But they picked out 5 wellness trends from their big customer survey this year.
Ooh.
And so I didn't see those.
I want to know.
Okay. So one of them, they were pretty exciting overall. So one of them was that the millennials and Gen Z are combined the Generation W, which is wellness.
Oh.
And so that there's this huge generation. And millennials is a huge group of people, especially in where we are. DC's just
it's full of them.
It's got to be some kind of millennial capital here. And that they are foregoing like the crash diets of the era of like Cher and Cindy Crawford for actual wellness treatments. And in some cases, like they're choosing wellness over some of just the more like party culture things, I guess.
You say that.
Yeah, I think when I think about that, I'm like, the DC millennial party culture is very, very strong.
Oh, so, yeah. Binge drinking capital of America.
Binge drinking capital, yeah. So I'm not quite seeing that from my point of view, but I also see maybe just because there's so many people and it's like a huge diverse group.
Yeah.
And I know in my generation, like I'm a what you call an elder millennial.
Yeah, I think I'm on the oldest end.
Yeah. And I know that so many of me and myself and friends and peers are motivated to be the opposite of our parents, which is a lot of baby boomers just signing up for Medicare and being like, cut my toe off.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
No, I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Cut my toe off and give me the pills.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I came up with the toe.
I
mean, hey, or it's like replace the joint. I guess that's the more relatable.
Exactly.
Yeah, most of our peers probably have a parent that has a joint replaced.
Yeah, and at the first sign of pain, if you go to, I just went the other day to an orthopedic doctor with my mom. Not to kind of go.
Bless your heart.
It was so painful. And I had to like bite my tongue the whole time because he said some bullshit that was not true. First of all, he told her to ice daily. I mean, and just, regardless of Dr. Gabe Merkin's research from 2015 that refuted his original study on the Rice method, for those of you in the audience.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Total reversal.
Yeah. Did you not read that research? That's been around for 8 years. I'm sorry, but
8 years,
telling her to ice daily is not a solution. It's going to just sort of gel that tissue. It's going to stagnate. It's not going to bring the global fluid exchange to the area to make her feel better.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's just
so
a big
important.
deal. And also he squeezed her knee so hard, and of course she's going to yell out. And it just was so annoying, and it was so low on the totem pole of what I expected in terms of healthcare, and he was really highly recommended. So
dang.
Anyways, my mom though didn't see it that way, because I talked to her about it afterward, because I didn't want to intervene until she didn't sign up for surgery. I just wanted to see what he was going to say. But she was like, "Oh, he seems so smart, and he says I need a knee replacement." I'm like, "Mom, yeah, of course he's gonna fucking say that." He said I'm bone on bone. I was like, "Did you look at the same X-ray I did? Because you were close on one side, but I can tell you why." In the pes anserinus, duh, that's where you're tight. That's where you have pain. But you're not bone on bone. And it's just that level of just, and that's where obfuscation.
Those name tags. They get it. They'll be like, "Hi, I'm bone on bone."
Exactly. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's such a classic thing, and I think we need to make fun of them with memes, because the only way to make them change is to show them how ridiculous they are.
Yeah, Ron Swanson could be really helpful from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, exactly. We need that.
Yeah, and it's perfectly suited because you're a beautifully bearded man, so this is great.
Oh God.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good trend, obviously, but I think it's also true. When I think about all the wellness providers I know, we're all busy right now.
Yeah, we are.
People need help.
Yep.
And our clients are getting young and younger.
I'm surprised by that.
Yeah.
And now that you give me that statistic, now I see that there's, these are numbers that are, I'm sure, nationwide, or if not global. Because my body is global, I think.
Is my body global? I don't know.
I feel like my friend in Australia uses it. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so the other trend they brought up, which I thought was great, which was really one part of this took me by surprise, was they used the term basically that most females, they said 43% of their audience, a lot, not most, so that's a good chunk, preferred women-only studios. And I thought that was really interesting. And they also, in the same paragraph, said it's not taboo to talk about periods because now it's really chic and in style to sync your training with your cycle.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings on this because I love working out and I love consistency and I love it's my badge of honor, right? It's my secret sauce. But then I also realized that, and we talked about this a lot in a recent episode with a acupuncturist. Her name was Enuin Sauce.
Oh, wow.
Russian.
Wait, that was her real name?
Yeah, Enuin Sauce. Enuin's, okay, I butchered it. But I'm going to include it in the show notes because it was a great episode. But we also talked about, that structure of consistency is very patriarchal.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't apply to women. Because, men wake up with a similar hormone cycle every day, and women do not.
Yeah.
And that's, that's a whole nother topic now, too.
Truly.
And, the body positivity, welcoming thing is, identifying in gender.
Yeah.
So that's another topic. But anyway, so that was their trend, was women not being taboo about their period. And it would be a really refreshing trend to make it less about the excuse of,
for sure,
hey, it's my second day, it's my heavy day and I don't feel good, instead of just taking it to the negative place, taking it to the constructive place. Yeah,
adapt for it. Where you are that day, you're gonna have to take that into account. But you don't necessarily have to not train or, feel. But again, so many people are so different at different parts in their life. and I'm the only man in my studio right now. Like,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I work with 3 other females, and it's amazing because, one could argue like I relate well to them, and it's sort of exciting, except for that aspect. I still find it curious, but everybody's different, and it's just fascinating to see. You're going to have to kind of make accommodations, but I agree with you that it could be almost like I don't want to call it a cop-out in any way, because I think I don't know enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, it would be sad for me to kind of opine on something that I don't myself experience.
Yeah. Well, some people don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of white men in America do.
Yeah.
But if I could kind of go back to
sure.
something we talked about earlier with fascial and emotional fabric. I mean, not to get too... But I had this one young client. She kind of falls into that first category of people, like very young, very strong. She was like, power lifter, really was into maximal lifting, had a traumatic event she didn't want to talk about. But right after that traumatic event, which was not physical, was more emotional trauma, she had a complete rectal prolapse. And it was so sad because, like, to think of, like, when you have such distress that you can kind of create this full body almost disconnect, because that's like a deep, deep-rooted core failure. And it didn't happen during a lift. And that's what's so interesting, because this person who was at the epitome of strength, who showed no signs of it prior, then would have this system-wide failure from this trauma. So we basically told her, you don't have to tell us, but you need to start tackling this issue and figure out what it is. And she did, and she got better. But she was ready to go to surgery. And what were they going to do? What was the surgery? It was going to be experimental.
Yeah.
But, like, you can't sew that
especially
shit back
on
up.
somebody that young, because that happens to much older women, for sure.
This was somebody in their late 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just fascinating. So keep your emotions, in check, people. Like, meaning, like, stay true to them, honor them, don't, tamp them down, figure things out if you can, and if you can't, try and get help. But it's a big deal, like, it's fascinating. That struck me.
Yeah. So, like, making things less taboo.
Yeah.
Like, being able to, like, actually say something to someone and them... Yeah, because there's definitely places in time where it was not okay to talk about any bodily functions. And so here, let's, like, celebrate this moment where you and I are talking about the inside out and the outside coming in. Out.
Exactly.
And the inside coming out. Okay, so all right, next one. All right, this is another encouraging one. Longevity over, like, weight loss being a trend for 2023.
Cool.
Very cool. And it said, and I really don't think this is true. There's no way this is true. This one says longevity. So over 1/4 of Americans practice biohacking. I mean, where are they? They're only people in Austin answered.
Yeah, exactly. Although, during COVID, with the amount of people who rejected the vaccine and all this stuff, and, some for good reasons, some for terrible reasons, that whole thing became a thing, I think. I guess because people were online more. But I remember in Clubhouse...
Oh, just like self-fixing? Yeah, self-diagnosing.
That term, I never heard of it until, COVID, and even during Clubhouse, where the biohacking rooms had hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And it shocked me because, like, of course, it came at a time where people were trying to find, ways of fortifying their immune system, doing whatever. But some of these people were such quacks. It was, I hate to say it, sorry, people. But they were promoting things that were just really not cool.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had anyways, I don't want to kind of go down that rabbit hole, but fascinating. I think that's really...
Yeah, I thought it was a big number.
Yeah. 100%, shit.
Because the other numbers that come up when we talk about body positivity are like the obesity epidemic. And there are epidemiologists out there that say, it's over half of Americans.
Yeah.
Well over.
Yeah.
And there's no sign of it slowing down because of childhood obesity
Really
rates and diabetes and things and metabolic problems very early on.
Yeah.
And the early puberties and stuff like that. Anyway, so I was really surprised to hear that. So if Mind Body, you want to like publish some more data on that and where people were taking your poll, because again, like I think a Mind Body app user is more affluent than not, probably more used in cities. I mean, it's an expensive thing to have as a business.
Yeah.
It's a very pricey thing. So I can imagine only, like say like you had a business in Indiana and then you have one in Bethesda. It's like are they paying the same rates for softwares as a Bethesda and New York City business? And so I just really question that one, and I don't think a quarter of Americans are using biohacking.
Well, maybe it's a quarter of Mind Body users, which goes back to.
But they did say Americans.
Yeah,
and I was
it's affluent people because by virtue of being on that app, you're going to a higher end studio.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, it's not ClassPass even. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because ClassPass is for coupon cutters, really.
Yeah, totally.
That's what it is. And
very true.
Well, I mean, no shade, whatever.
Yeah,
do your $5 class, whatever. But like, so I thought that was an interesting one. And this is the fifth one. And it's a good one to end on because it like really brings us back to our original like connection. And so wellness collectives are trending. And I think you and I both understand that. And so it said 43% of consumers say it's important to have a wellness community. Mm-hmm. And so for me, like someone who's like, I've recently like committed to sobriety from alcohol.
Oh, cool.
And so, and also like having grown in a community, a wellness community for the past like 3-4 years personally on my own personal development, and that's within like the Wim Hof kind of neighborhood, which is a great place to meet people, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Talk about enthusiasm.
You can't do an ice bath by yourself for some reason.
No, I mean,
you can take a hot bath by yourself,
you did it, right? Like, and it's a badge of honor, so you have to tell me.
Yeah. But I do ice baths by myself. You guys know that on my Instagram. But anyways, they are better with people and friends and good soundtracks. But so I think it's an interesting one to end on because we met through our mutual friend. Well, we're not sure how we met, but...
We met many ways,
We
right?
met many ways, yeah.
Our orbits have been like, finally we crashed into each other because our orbits are so close.
Yeah, that's what it is. So one
the
of our...
gravitational pull is too strong.
Yeah, so one of the moons in our stratosphere is Melanie Webb.
Hey, Melanie.
Hi, Melanie, who's been on our podcast twice and both featured on her app, I believe. Webb-Well, W-E-B-B, Well. WELL on the App Store. And so there's a lot of amazing fitness professionals in there, and we're two of them.
And it's a curious array. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And she's such a good connector.
Yeah. And when I think about people trying to create community and maintaining it, I do think about her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you strive to create community in your life?
I'm
How?
obsessed with it.
Okay.
And, like in terms of like the fitness industry, we were kind of talking about it earlier. We touched upon it, but I don't see myself as having competitors. I see myself as having, collaborators. And I want to tell, like all my sort of fellow studio owners, please, let's create a community where we foster mutual ideas and let's collaborate rather than try and pretend that there's so many potential clients and
so many people need help.
Yeah. And I refer out obviously all the time, and I get referrals, and it's not just for that thing, but just to kind of foster a greater I want continuing education to become a thing in DC.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with it.
Just get your fingers dirty.
Yeah, truly.
And explore. Yeah. So I really love the idea of just exploring when it comes to exercise and, looking in the corner over there, I have the perfect tool to do that.
Yeah.
So it's I love bringing in practitioners and coaches, and like we work with tennis coaches, baseball coaches, all the coaches, and because they always have an interesting perspective on obviously their clients and their players, but also like just self-improvement, and they're usually curious about the body, so like that's exciting, and they don't know enough to like, like really have an opinion, so they just want to know more, and it's even better.
And you know what's ironic? Is that because I have the benefit of working with some of the biggest minds in our industry, is that the smarter these people are, the less opinionated they are. Mm-hmm. And the more they're like, tell me more about that. And it's like so fucking cool. So you can kind of tell when people are at what stage of their knowledge they are. If they're like kind of low, they'll pretend they know everything. And as they kind of go up that trajectory, they're just more and more curious, and it's just fucking cool. I love that.
Okay, that's a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much for hanging out and coming to Alexandria.
Truly, thank you.
Yes.
This is many years in the making.
Yeah.
We finally met.
Yes. All right. Think Fit, Be Fit. Thank you guys for tuning in to this series. If you want more interviews like this, please let us know at hello@thinkfitbefitpodcast.com, socials, thinkfitbefit_podcast, and, always share this with your friends so that we can continue to just be more rational and insanely intelligent fitness consumers. That's my wish for you. All right, Happy New Year again, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for listening and being a part of the Think Fit, Be Fit podcast network. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends and family. If you're interested in further resources, check out or visit our website, thinkfitbefitpodcast.com.